Hello, and welcome to A Sound Constitution here on CHLY 101.7 FM, a show where we focus on health topics important to our community. This year's team is made up of 8 fourth-year VIU nursing students, and our goal is to demystify health issues and address common misconceptions by sharing evidence-informed information from a variety of reliable resources. All information provided on our show will be available on our show notes on Facebook and Instagram pages. We want to remind our listeners that the information presented in this show is for educational purposes only and does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about what's being discussed, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook at A Sound Constitution, Instagram at CHLY A Sound Constitution, or email us at asoundconstitution@gmail.com.
We would like to start our show by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territory of the Nanaimo people, with a broadcasting range that overlaps the Powhatan and Sliamon territories. This acknowledgement is done with the gratitude to the Nanaimo people and with the intention to increase awareness about truth and reconciliation processes and efforts on Vancouver Island. Additional information and resources surrounding the Nanaimo history, reconciliation, protocol, and land acknowledgement can be found on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages.
In 2021, people in BC missed 3.65 million days of work due to work-related incidents and disease. There was 141,320 work-related injuries reported to WorkSafe BC in 2021. When it comes to health and safety, everyone in the workplace has distinct responsibilities. Whether you're an owner, employer, supervisor, or worker, you have a role to play in keeping the workplace safe. As a worker, you have the right to a safe and healthy workplace, which includes the right to refuse unsafe work. Today, we are providing our CHLY listeners with an episode that explores all things workplace safety and leadership. Hi, I'm Karis, one of your hosts of A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM, and I want to say thanks for tuning in. In this episode, we'll discuss all things workplace health and safety and how leadership plays a role in creating and maintaining a safe work environment. We also had the privilege of interviewing 2 BCNU occupational health and safety officers who share information and resources regarding all things occupational health and safety. The importance of workplace safety can't be stressed enough. The benefits of workplace safety are overwhelming. Workplace safety benefits both the company and the worker, which is a win-win for everyone. Lots of valuable information, data, and materials are to be discovered in this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Human safety mainly focuses on the safety of health, hygiene, and environment of all people, including clients, employees, and management. Everyone in a workplace, including the employer, supervisor, employees, and clients, has a responsibility to promote hygiene and safety. As defined by the World Health Organization, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being and not merely the absence of just disease. Safety is the state of being safe, the condition of being protected from harm or other undesirable outcomes. Regular risk assessments should be conducted to identify health and safety problems and initiate necessary measures to eliminate or mitigate them as far as possible. Occupational health and safety is a discipline with a broad scope involving many specialized fields. It encompasses the social, mental, and physical well-being of workers, that is, the whole person. Occupational health and safety is defined as the discipline concerned with preserving and protecting human resources in the workplace. OH&S works to promote and maintain the highest degree of physical, mental, and social well-being of workers in all occupations. Workplace safety is the process of protecting employees from work-related illness and injury. Workplace Safety and Prevention Services is an organization that provides workplace safety resources, training, and certification for Ontario workers and does a great job of explaining and breaking down just what workplace safety is. Give it a listen.
Simple safety solutions, duties and responsibilities. In Ontario, workplace health and safety is regulated by the Occupational Health and Safety Act, commonly referred to as the OHSA or the Act. Some people even call it the Green Book. Under the Act, maintaining a healthy and safe workplace is a shared responsibility among the employer, supervisor, and the workers themselves. This concept is known as the Internal Responsibility System, or IRS, and it's the underlying principle of the Act. It means that we all work together to identify and control hazards and prevent injuries. The employer may be the owner or the person everyone knows as the boss. A supervisor would include a person who has either charge of a workplace or authority over a worker. And a worker is generally any person who gets paid to perform work or supply services. But there's an exception. Co-op students, interns, and apprentices are also considered workers. Under the Act, each workplace party has very specific duties and responsibilities. The employer is ultimately responsible for establishing the health and safety program. This includes determining the rules for working safely, training workers on the rules and procedures for working safely, providing the right tools and equipment and ensuring they are maintained, managing hazards to eliminate or reduce the risk of injuries and illness, appointing a competent person as a supervisor, and take every precaution reasonable. In general, a supervisor is responsible for training workers on how to do their job safely, enforcing rules including the use of safety equipment and machine guarding, and take every precaution reasonable. And workers have responsibilities too. Some of these duties include following safe work procedures and rules, using the safety equipment properly, and reporting hazards and injuries to their supervisors. This communication helps ensure that supervisors can respond quickly to potential hazards. Workers also support the internal responsibility system by understanding their three rights: the right to know about the potential hazards of their job, the right to participate in workplace health and safety, and the right to refuse unsafe work believed to be dangerous to their own health and safety or to that of a coworker. It's important to remember that a worker cannot be threatened or punished for following the laws. This includes reporting a hazard, refusing unsafe work, or for cooperating with the Ministry of Labor during inspections or investigations. A dysfunctional internal responsibility system can cost your business. And it's not just about losing a productive employee. Workplace injuries and illnesses can result in higher WSIB insurance costs, not to mention Ministry of Labor work orders, tickets, and fines that result from non-compliance with the OHSA. A conviction can also lead to a jail sentence for the employer, supervisor, or worker. No one wants to pay fines or unplanned legal fees. But more importantly, no one wants to be responsible for the injury or death of a coworker. So what can you do to support your internal responsibility system? Start by understanding the specific duties and responsibilities for your workplace. It may help to put them in writing. Then communicate this information to everyone who needs to know. And finally, talk with your workers. Ask questions so you know everyone understands the important role they play in maintaining a safe and healthy workplace. For tools and resources to support your health and safety program, visit the WSPS Small Business Center at WSPS.ca.
Hey everyone, here are 3 workplace safety tips every employee should know. Number 1. Be aware of your surroundings. Every job site has inherent dangers, whether that's heavy machinery, conveyor belts, or even tripping over items in the office. The best way to keep yourself and others safe is to identify the hazards in your workplace and be aware of your surroundings. Knowing your surroundings and potential hazards will help you and your coworkers identify how to minimize the risk and avoid workplace injuries. Number 2, keep correct posture. We've all heard of the saying, lift with your legs, not your back. But keeping correct posture refers to more than just employees who lift things. Maintaining your body in a neutral posture is important to minimize the stress placed on your body, even if you work at a desk. You need to make sure you have good posture to avoid back problems, neck pain, and even carpal tunnel. Number 3, take regular breaks. It's important that you always take your regular breaks. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration has put them in place for a reason. Tired workers are the most prone to causing an incident. The more tired you are, the less aware you are of your surroundings, and the more at risk you are for an injury. Take the breaks you're given on a regular schedule to keep yourself fresh, and try to schedule your more difficult tasks for the beginning of your shift when you're most alert.
BC Nurses Union is the largest nursing union in BC and the only union to offer services to nurses related to all 4 domains of nursing: research, clinical practice, leadership, and education. They are committed to defending nurses' individual rights as well as the nursing profession and are the only healthcare union that has a long and successful track record of gains in wages and working conditions. The BC Nurses Union protects and advances the health, safety, social, and economic well-being of their members, their profession, and their communities. At this current time, BCNU represents more than 48,000 members, most of whom are covered by a single provincial contract. This contract is used as a standard for BCNU members. Today, I had the privilege of interviewing 2 current BCNU occupational health and safety officers, Keena Opal and Natalie Mass. Keena joined BCNU after 32 years as an environmental health officer / public health inspector at Island Health. During that time, she was a member of a large BC public service union in various labor activist roles, including facilitating OH&S. Her educational credentials include a Bachelor of Science, a Master's of Adult Education, a Diploma in Environmental Health and Biotechnology, as well as a Certificate in Occupational Health and Safety. Natalie is a registered nurse who previously worked in perinatal labor and delivery for 13 years. As a BCNU member, she was the regional OH&S representative for 2 years, representing nurses' occupational health and safety concerns in her region. For the last 2 years, she has been an occupational health and safety officer with BCNU, with a portfolio covering Vancouver Coastal Health Authority worksites. Sit back, relax, and get ready to learn all things occupational health and safety from the experts themselves, Keena and Natalie. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing 2 BCNU OH&S officers, my mom, Keena, and her colleague, Natalie. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today and talk a little bit about workplace safety. To start, I want to give our listeners a little bit more information about what an OH&S officer is. As a BCNU OH&S officer, can you please tell our listeners what this means?
Absolutely. We work for the BC Nurses Union as occupational health and safety officers. We are considered staff of the union. BCNU has approximately 48,000 members and 175 staff.
What is your role and responsibilities within BCNU as an OH&S officer?
So our work involves supporting workers with health and safety issues. For example, violence, exposure to decriminalized drugs, exposure to chemicals or biological hazards, musculoskeletal injuries. We talk to them about personal protective equipment. My portfolio covers Island Health and Providence Health.
OH&S officers also facilitate health and safety courses. We support joint occupational health and safety committee members, and we encourage the reporting of incidents, hazards, and near misses. My portfolio covers Vancouver Coastal Health Authority.
In this episode of A Sound Constitution, we're discussing workplace safety, including topics such as injuries, bullying, harassment, and violence. Are there different kinds of injuries one can experience at work? If so, what are they?
Yes, there are both physical and psychological injuries that can take place at the work site.
Nurses can experience violence, which can be verbal or physical. So, for example, punches, bites, scratches, or being hit with equipment. Musculoskeletal injuries include strains, sprains, aches, back and shoulder injuries, and inflammation. These are all things that can be experienced by healthcare workers. Nurses can be exposed to unregulated substances, inhalation or burns, exposure to biological agents, communicable diseases, or chemicals.
What is a musculoskeletal injury, or an MSI?
So MSI, as we described earlier, can include things like sprains, strains, aches. They might include back and shoulder injuries, inflammation, soft tissue damage, everything related to muscles, tendons, ligaments, and the bones come under that musculoskeletal category. MSI is the number one reported injury to the Workers' Compensation Board, which is also known as WorkSafe BC. These injuries account for the most of time lost from work. And in fact, sometimes they can be career-ending injuries. So they need to be reported as soon as you start to feel those twinges, those aches, those pains. You start having to take anti-inflammatory painkillers. Make sure you report this. Even putting it in your first aid book allows documentation of the progression of that MSI.
Wow, that's good to know. How can I learn more about musculoskeletal injuries?
WorkSafe BC has a website with a wealth of information on musculoskeletal injuries, how to identify them, and how to prevent them. If you're an employed student nurse, the health authorities also have MSIP coaches that can help workers to prevent these types of injuries.
That's good to know. As a student nurse, there are quite a few ESNs that I know working on the floor, so that's good information to know. What is workplace violence? Moving on to another topic there.
So yes, violence does affect many nurses and workers in healthcare facilities. So WorkSafe BC, WCB, uses this definition presently: the attempted or actual exercise by a person of any physical force so as to cause injury to a worker, and it also includes threats or behaviors that a worker believes may injure them.
What can be done to stop violence against healthcare workers?
So important to remember that your employer has the responsibility to provide a safe and healthy workplace. They must complete violence risk assessments and implement corrective actions to keep workers safe. For example, for workers who work alone or in isolation, there must be a system to check in on these workers. Or in a home care nursing setting, the homes must be assessed to allow the worker to go home at the end of their shift safe. There can be no weapons or wild dogs or cats, for example. Reporting and using the right to refuse unsafe work is so important. Care plans must always be updated after any violent incident that involves a patient.
So how can we learn more about stopping workplace violence?
So as mentioned previously, the Workers' Compensation Board does have information on workplace violence, and they also have documents on domestic violence, which can also affect a work site, such as a healthcare facility. So lots of great resources at the WorkSafe BC website. You can also check out the BCNU website. We have information about occupational health and safety in your collective agreement. We have all kinds of other resources.
Perfect. I'll be sure to add those resources in our show notes so that you're able to access some of those. Where does bullying and harassment fall in workplace safety? Are those examples of injuries to be reported?
Yes, but at this time, we certainly do have some concern with the process around bullying and harassment. So the employer has to have in place written policies and investigation procedures, and they are the ones that do the investigations. They report on their assessments and then let the parties know the results. This is expected to change in the next year in the occupational health and safety regulation because this has not proven to be an effective method. Bullying and harassment may involve both physical and psychological injuries, and these things must be reported. We're hoping that bullying and harassment will come under the definition of violence, and WCB will be able to inspect, enforce, write orders, and ensure that health authorities and independent sites have really effective processes in place to maintain the health and safety of our workers.
Wow, that would be really good if that were something that would happen. We'll keep an eye out for that in the next year or so to see that take place. How are bullying and harassment in the workplace reported?
That's a great question. All workers in BC have the duty to report unsafe acts or conditions in their workplace. Health authority workers can call in to the Provincial Workplace Health Contact Center at 1-866-922-9464, and their report will be forwarded to the appropriate Respect in the Workplace department to discuss their concerns. For workers who do not work for a health authority, they must follow their employer's reporting process, and it's important to know where to find these policies and procedures in your workplace.
That's a great resource, and I'll be sure to share that phone number in our show notes as well. Thank you, Natalie. What should you do if you experience unsafe work?
If you truly believe as a reasonable person that work is unsafe, you must use the refusal of unsafe work procedure. You need to contact your supervisor, who will investigate immediately. They will rule the work safe or unsafe. If you don't agree with their assessment, they then have to follow another investigation process that involves the worker, the supervisor, and a member of the Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee. Again, they will rule safe or unsafe. If you still do not agree with the assessment, you need to call WorkSafe BC, talk to them, immediately identify this is a refusal of unsafe work, and they will then get an officer involved. When the officer does the assessment, once they rule the work safe, you actually have to continue and do that work. If you don't, your employer could take discipline against you. So WorkSafe officers are the ultimate decision maker as to whether work is safe or unsafe. I'll just let Natalie address a little bit more about unsafe work.
It's so important to know that most situations will not involve a refusal. But the first thing to do, it's so important, is to let your supervisor know so that they have an opportunity to correct the problem verbally and follow up with them in writing. Your supervisor may wish for you to fill out a PSLS hazard report. The supervisor may also immediately resolve the unsafe work without having to go forward in the process.
Those steps are really good to know. I'll be sure to compile those together in kind of a step-by-step list, and I'll share that with our listeners as well. What support does BCNU have in place for members regarding workplace safety?
BCNU has 16 regions throughout the province. Each region has an elected OH&S representative who advocates for the health and safety of nurses in their region. They're that local connection that nurses have. Our team in the Health and Safety Department supports and connects members to resources, and we also have interactive learning modules that members can complete on the BCNU website.
Great. I'm a nursing student right now. Does BCNU offer students any programs or services?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. All student nurses can join BCNU for no charge. You can access great educational opportunities, and those are described on the BCNU website. The free membership includes access to a fantastic workshop about building union strength. You'll get to understand more about BCNU. You'll learn how to read your collective agreement. You'll be able to connect with the regional groups that Natalie just mentioned. You can attend their educational meetings. They have dinner meetings, all kinds of great stuff. You'll have access to conferences. We have a practice conference coming up. We have a human rights conference coming up. So you would have the right to apply to attend those types of things. You get a free BCNU student lanyard mailed to your home upon registration. You get a copy of the Update magazine, and often the Update magazine has information about occupational health and safety, and the magazine regularly has features on students and young nurses and lots of information about up-to-date important issues for nurses.
Great. That sounds like a great resource, and I'll be sure to share that one as well. Do those programs and services change once you become a new grad nurse?
When you become a new grad nurse, nothing changes, but the services are wider. So members will have access to the BCNU member portal and all information provided there. There is also a licensing, education, advocacy, and practice program, professional responsibility support, enhanced disability management program, and servicing through the Labor Relations Department, where there's also support through the WCB Appeals Department.
Wow, lots of supports for us when we graduate and become new grads. Are there educational opportunities available to me in the new grad role, and how do I find out about these opportunities?
Yes, we have everything listed on the BCNU website, and we encourage new members to take the Building Union Strength course. Your salary is paid by the union while you learn about BCNU and the supports available. There are also skill labs on various topics and online interactive training modules.
Great, some resources and education opportunities I'll have to take advantage of for sure. And lastly, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners today?
So I'm going to end by talking about the 4 legislated safety rights that all workers have in British Columbia. Natalie and I believe it's really important that all workers understand their rights. The first right, the right to know about those violence risk assessments, where your personal protective equipment is located, the right to know how to deal with those violent patients, how to practice a code white, how to do evacuations and fire drills and so on and so forth. Your employer has the responsibility to ensure you know about hazards, things that can hurt you, and what corrective measures are in place. You have the right to participate in health and safety. You can choose to sit on your joint occupational health and safety committee. You can speak out about health concerns. You can call WorkSafe BC and ask them questions. You can contact us at BCNU for information. You have a right to participate in your own health and safety. I mentioned the refusal of unsafe work, which is a must. If you truly believe work is unsafe, you must go through the steps I described earlier in this session. Often, when people refuse work or they speak out about health and safety, employers can be a little arbitrary. They can decide that That one speaks out a lot. I don't think they should be working day shifts. Let's put them on the night shift, or let's move their job location. Let's not give them any overtime. Those things are called prohibited actions. And for speaking out about health and safety, the employer cannot do those things. There is a complaint process at WCB, and our department has been active in helping workers file those complaints and having the employer not necessarily accept responsibility, but WorkSafe orders them to make corrections because of those prohibited actions. And it's highly effective. So if you need help with that, you contact us, healthandsafety@bcnu.org. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Natalie.
Thank you. Just some final thoughts as we summarize. Because it's the worker's responsibility to report hazards and conditions in their workplace, make sure that you have one of the BCNU reporting cards on your lanyard. The berry-colored cards are for health authority employees, and the teal-colored cards are for other work sites not covered by health authorities. Reporting would apply to ESNs and employed workers. As students, you must use the reporting structure of VIU.
Great, thank you so much. And those reporting cards, the berry colored ones that we can add to our lanyards, I do have a couple of those, and I will be in the nurses building throughout the weekdays. And if you'd like one, I can give you one of those, and you can add that to your lanyard. Thank you again, Kina and Natalie, for taking time to share your knowledge, give us lots of new information and resources on workplace safety. We'll be sure to add them to our show notes, and I just want to say thanks again.
And thanks for inviting us to talk about health and safety. It's a topic that's near and dear to our heart, and we want to make sure that all workers get safe home after their shifts.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
If you are just tuning in now, that was an interview with two BCNU OH&S officers telling us a little bit more about workplace safety. Simon Sinek explores how leaders can inspire cooperation, trust, and change. As a management theorist, Simon suggests it's someone who makes their employees feel secure and someone who draws staffers into a circle of trust. Creating trust and safety is a big responsibility and what is explored in this TED Talk. Why Good Leaders Make You Feel Safe by Simon Sinek. I hope you enjoy it.
There's a man by the name of Captain William Swenson, who recently was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions on September 8th, 2009. On that day, a column of American and Afghan troops were making their way through a part of Afghanistan to help protect a group of government officials, a group of Afghan government officials who'd be meeting with some local village elders. The column came under ambush and was surrounded on three sides. And amongst many other things, Captain Swenson was recognized for running into live fire to rescue the wounded and pull out the dead. One of the people he rescued was a sergeant, and he and a comrade were making their way to a medevac helicopter. And what was remarkable about this day is, by sheer coincidence, one of the medevac medics happened to have a GoPro camera on his helmet and captured the whole scene on camera. It shows Captain Swenson and his comrade bringing this wounded soldier who'd received a gunshot to the neck. They put him in the helicopter, and then you see Captain Swenson bend over and give him a kiss before he turns around to rescue more. I saw this, and I thought to myself, where do people like that come from? What is that? That is some deep, deep emotion when you would want to do that. There's a love there. And I want to know, why is it that I don't have people that I work with like that? You know, in the military, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. In business, we give bonuses to people who are willing to sacrifice others so that we may gain. Yeah, right? So I asked myself, where do people like this come from? And my initial conclusion was that they're just better people. That's why they're attracted to the military. These better people are attracted to this concept of service. But that's completely wrong. What I learned is that it's the environment. And if you get the environment right, every single one of us has the capacity to do these remarkable things. And more importantly, others have that capacity too. I've had the great honor of getting to meet some of these who we would call heroes, who've put themselves and put their lives at risk to save others. And I asked them, why would you do it? Why did you do it? And they all say the same thing, because they would have done it for me. It's this deep sense of trust and cooperation. So trust and cooperation are really important here. The problem with concepts of trust and cooperation is that they are feelings, they're not instructions. I can't simply say to you, trust me, and you will. I can't simply instruct two people to cooperate, and they will. It's not how it works. It's a feeling. So where does that feeling come from? If you go back 50,000 years to the Paleolithic era, to the early days of Homo sapien, what we find is that the world was filled with danger. All of these forces working very, very hard to kill us. Nothing personal. Whether it was the weather, lack of resources, maybe a saber-toothed tiger, all of these things working to reduce our lifespan. And so we evolved into social animals, where we lived together and worked together in what I call a circle of safety, inside the tribe, where we felt like we belong. And when we felt safe amongst our own, the natural reaction was trust and cooperation. There are inherent benefits to this. It means I can fall asleep at night and trust that someone from within my tribe will watch for danger. If we don't trust each other, if I don't trust you, that means you won't watch for danger. Bad system of survival. The modern day is exactly the same thing. The world is filled with danger, things that are trying to frustrate our lives or reduce our success, reduce our opportunity for success. It could be the ups and downs of an economy, the uncertainty of the stock market. It could be a new technology that renders your business model obsolete overnight. Or it could be your competition that is sometimes trying to kill you. It's sometimes trying to put you out of business, but at the very minimum is working hard to frustrate your growth and steal your business from you. We have no control over these forces. These are a constant, and they're not going away. The only variable are the conditions inside the organization. And that's where leadership matters, because it's the leader that sets the tone.
If you're just tuning in, this is A Sound Constitution, and we are listening to a TED Talk by Simon Sinek. He is a management theorist. This TED Talk's all about what makes a great leader and why good leaders make you feel safe. I hope you enjoy.
When a leader makes the choice to put the safety and lives of the people inside the organization first, to sacrifice their comforts and sacrifice the tangible results so that the people remain and feel safe and feel like they belong, remarkable things happen. I was flying on a trip, and I was witness to an incident where a passenger attempted to board before their number was called. And I watched the gate agent treat this man like he had broken the law, like a criminal. He was yelled at for attempting to board one group too soon. So I said something. I said, why do you have to treat us like cattle? Why can't you treat us like human beings? And this is exactly what she said to me. She said, sir, if I don't follow the rules, I could get in trouble or lose my job. All she was telling me is that she doesn't feel safe. All she was telling me is that she doesn't trust her leaders. The reason we like flying Southwest Airlines is not because they necessarily hire better people, it's because they don't fear their leaders. You see, if the conditions are wrong, we're forced to expend our own time and energy to protect ourselves from each other. And that inherently weakens the organization. When we feel safe inside the organization, we will naturally combine our talents and our strengths and work tirelessly to face the dangers outside and seize the opportunities. The closest analogy I can give to what a great leader is like being a parent. If you think about what being a great parent is, what do you want? What makes a great parent? We want to give our child opportunities, education, discipline them when necessary, all so that they can grow up and achieve more than we could for ourselves. Great leaders want exactly the same thing. They want to provide their people opportunity, education, discipline when necessary, build their self-confidence, give them the opportunity to try and fail, all so that they could achieve more than we could ever imagine for ourselves. Charlie Kim, who's the CEO of a company called NextJump in New York City, a tech company, he makes the point that if you had hard times in your family, would you ever consider laying off one of your children? We would never do it. Then why do we consider laying off people inside our organization? Charlie implemented a policy of lifetime employment. If you get a job at NextJump, you cannot get fired for performance issues. In fact, if you have issues, they will coach you and they will give you support, just like we would with one of our children who happens to come home with a C from school. It's the complete opposite. This is the reason so many people have such a visceral hatred, sort of anger at some of these banking CEOs with their disproportionate salaries and bonus structures. It's not the numbers. It's that they have violated the very definition of leadership. They have violated this deep-seated social contract. We know that they allowed their people to be sacrificed so that they could protect their own interests. Or worse, they sacrificed their people to protect their own interests. This is what so offends us, not the numbers. Would anybody be offended if we gave a $150 million bonus to Gandhi? How about a $250 million bonus to Mother Teresa? Do we have an issue with that? None at all. None at all. Great leaders would never sacrifice the people to save the numbers. They would sooner sacrifice the numbers to save the people. Bob Chapman, who runs a large manufacturing company in the Midwest called Barry Waymiller, in 2008, he was hit very hard by the recession, and they lost 30% of their orders overnight. Now, in a large manufacturing company, this is a big deal, and they could no longer afford their labor pool. They needed to save $10 million. So, like so many companies today, the board got together and discussed layoffs. And Bob refused. You see, Bob doesn't believe in head counts. Bob believes in heart counts. And it's much more difficult to simply reduce the heart count. And so they came up with a furlough program. Every employee from secretary to CEO was required to take 4 weeks of unpaid vacation. They could take it any time they wanted, and they did not have to take it consecutively. But it was how Bob announced the program that mattered so much. He said, it's better that we should all suffer a little than any of us should have to suffer a lot. And morale went up. They saved $20 million. And most importantly, as would be expected, when the people feel safe and protected by the leadership in the organization, the natural reaction is to trust and cooperate. And quite spontaneously, nobody expected, people started trading with each other. Those who could afford it more would trade with those who could afford it less. People would take 5 weeks so that somebody else only had to take 3. Leadership is a choice. It is not a rank. I know many people at the senior-most levels of organizations who are absolutely not leaders. They are authorities, and we do what they say because they have authority over us, but we would not follow them. And I know many people who are at the bottoms of organizations who have no authority, and they are absolutely leaders. And this is because they have chosen to look after the person to the left of them, and they have chosen to look after the person to the right of them. This is what a leader is. I heard a story of some Marines who were out in theater, and as is the Marine custom, the officer ate last, and he let his men eat first. And when they were done, there was no food left for him. And when they went back out in the field, his men brought him some of their food so that he may eat. Because that's what happens. We call them leaders because they go first. We call them leaders because they take the risk before anybody else does. We call them leaders because they will choose to sacrifice so that their people may be safe and protected, and so their people may gain. And when we do, the natural response is that our people will sacrifice for us. They will give us their blood and sweat and tears to see that their leader's vision comes to life. And when we ask them, why would you do that? Why would you give your blood and sweat and tears for that person? They all say the same thing. Because they would have done it for me. And isn't that the organization we would all like to work in? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
This is Lauren with a fact break. Here are a few workplace safety tips that every employee should know coming from esafety.com. First, never take shortcuts on procedures. Workplace procedures exist to keep employees safe, so using every tool and machine according to their instructions is critical. This is especially true for operations that require heavy machinery. Shortcuts lead to injury and aren't worth the small amount of time that they might save you. Be sure you're always using the right tool for the job and that you're using it correctly. Next, be aware of new safety procedures. When your company purchases a new machine or updates training, it's important to become familiar with the latest safety procedures. And lastly, keep emergency exits clear. Never place anything in front of an emergency exit door, even if it's only for a few minutes. While this might seem like a no-brainer, it's surprising how many ladders, carts, or even forklifts get set in front of emergency exits.
Thank you for sharing those tips with our listeners, Lauren. Now to continue to explore aspects of transformational leadership and its influence on workplace safety, along with a few more tips that could help strengthen one's ability to create a safe and healthy work environment. In this TED Talk, Joanne Simon Walters, a resourceful leader with 20 years of progressive management in various different areas, has earned degrees in finance and technology management, is currently pursuing her PhD in creative leadership for innovation and change at the University of the Virgin Islands, is an author of 3 HR certification preparation manuals, and currently works in an HR leadership position. Will explore how transformational leadership attributes support a shift in a company's culture that creates an environment where bullies are not welcomed. Happy listening.
Live so that when your children think of fairness, caring, and integrity, they think of you. This is my guiding principle every day as I enter my workplace. To become a butterfly, a caterpillar first releases enzymes that dissolves all of its tissues, essentially digesting itself. All that's left at the end of the digestive process are a group of highly organized cells called discs. Those discs become the body parts of a butterfly. Like the caterpillar, you already have what you need to transform your workplace into a place where every employee feels supported to be their best self. Now, it may not be a pretty process, similar to that visual of a caterpillar digesting itself. But like the disc the caterpillar leaves behind, you already have the raw material you need within you to transform your workplace into something extraordinary, like a butterfly. When you hear the word bully, you probably picture that kid that picked on other kids, called other kids names, stole lunch money. You know that kid? Well, similar characteristics exist in adults in the workplace, yet there are no federal level American laws that specifically speak to workplace bullying. Now, to be clear, we do have 30 states and 2 territories that have introduced healthy workplace bills, but none of those have been fully adopted into law. And at the federal level, we do have anti-harassment and anti-discrimination laws that provide some protections for certain groups of Americans. But the challenge we face is that much of the behavior that would be classified as bullying rarely ever rises to the level of what our laws would consider illegal harassment.
If you're just tuning in, this is A Sound Constitution, and we are listening to a TED Talk by Joanne Simon Walters, a resourceful leader with 20 years of progressive management experience in financial services, information technology, healthcare consulting, education, and human resources. Joanne's talk will cause you to question your own behaviors, your actions, and interactions when you encounter colleagues bullying each other. Stay tuned for more.
What is bullying? My favorite definition is the characterization by one international workplace bullying expert who says that workplace bullying is a psychological power imbalance that can be equated to domestic violence. Now, that's some pretty heavy stuff. Given that there are no federal level laws that address bullying in the workplace, we have to rely on people, our colleagues, ourselves, to make the choice to be better humans. And how exactly do we do that? From my perspective, the answer lies within every person in this room. We have to have the courage to be different, to go against the grain, to lead. Peter G. Northhouse defines ethical leadership as a process by which a good person rightly influences others to accomplish a common good, to make the world better and more humane. So if you can accept that leadership is a process, and a process can be learned, then you can accept that you can choose to lead differently within your span of influence with respect to workplace bullying. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission refers to bullying as general harassment, to make a differentiation between illegal harassment and just a plain old lack of civility. They found that there are two ways to address harassment in the workplace. The first is to evoke a change in company culture. The second is to focus on civility. In fact, they say that it's on all of us to be a part of the fight to stop workplace harassment. We cannot choose to be complacent bystanders and expect our workplaces to change themselves. And if we are going to offer training, that training should focus on respect and civility in the workplace, not just a focus on eliminating illegal harassment. In other words, the EEOC is imploring companies not just to focus on meeting the minimum legal requirement of providing training or creating policies to address harassment, but move to a higher level of morality and take a true look at the lack of civility in the workplace. Several years ago, I was an HR manager reporting to a chief HR officer. I got this job after being a stay-at-home mom for 2 years with my oldest child. The first week on the job, I was given an assignment by my boss, and as I worked through the assignment, I thought I should stop and check in with her and see if I'm even on track to meet her expectations. In a one-on-one meeting with her, I gave her a hard copy of a rough draft of a spreadsheet that I created, and she proceeded to take out a red pen, start drawing X's across my work, and sigh and murmur so many unflattering comments about me beneath her breath. So as the meeting progressed, I decided to just say, could you just tell me from scratch what exactly it is that you want, because clearly I've missed the mark. Her response to me was to take that hard copy of that spreadsheet, that rough draft I'd given her, throw it at me and say, what do I want? What do I want? I want data I can use. I left that meeting and I cried in the bathroom. I wasn't sure in that moment if it was me or if it was her. I mean, come on, let's face it. I just spent 2 years doing nothing but talking about poopy diapers and setting up play dates and talking about nursing. Was it possible that maybe I forgot how to be the competent professional that I used to be? That was the first of many incidents. Her berating, her sabotage of my work, her defamation of my character went on for years. As the HR manager that handled employee relations. I was the one that people came to if they had an issue of this magnitude with their colleague or boss or union representative. But who did I have to turn to? Who exactly does HR go to when HR is being bullied? Finally, 3 years later, I reported her to the CEO. Lots happened following that report, none of which ended her employment or even caused her to have a demotion. At least not immediately. That came years after I left. But what I learned in that experience is that I wasn't the first, nor would I be the last body in her trail of terror. Was that bullying? It was for me.
This is Karis with a fact break. Here are a few more workplace safety tips every employee should know, coming from esafety.com. First, keep emergency exits clear. Never place anything in front of an emergency exit door, even if it's only for a few minutes. While this might sound like a no-brainer, it's surprising how many ladders, carts, and even forklifts get set in front of emergency exits. Also, ensure pathways to equipment and emergency shutoffs are clear in case something needs to be powered down immediately. Second, report unsafe conditions. The best way to stop unsafe working conditions from happening is to report them to supervisors as soon as you notice them, and then help be a part of the solution. Your supervisor is legally obligated to provide all employees with safe working environments, but this is only possible if employees make them aware of these conditions. In order to keep yourself and other employees safe, it's important to always report any hazardous situations or behaviors immediately. A positive safety culture is created when everybody works together to find a solution that prevents unsafe conditions from occurring again in the future. Lastly, always wear personal protective equipment. Finally, ensure you're always wearing the personal protective equipment, PPE, provided to you by your employer. For example, when handling some chemicals, you may only need to wear safety glasses and a pair of gloves. In other cases, you may need to wear different or additional PPE. PPE can cover a range of equipment, from earplugs to hard hats to chemical suits, and they're all incredibly important. Whatever type of PPE your employer gives you, it exists and is required to be worn for a reason. Wearing the correct PPE for your job is another great way to create a safe workplace for yourself and others. Well, that sound means you've reached the end of another episode of A Sound Constitution. Thank you everyone for tuning in today with your hosts, Lauren, McKenna, Karis, and Kiana. Be sure to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Join the conversation, access our show notes, and be in the know for our next episodes. As always, our friendly reminder to our listeners that the information presented in this show is for educational purposes only and does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about what's being discussed, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook at A Sound Constitution, Instagram at CHLY A Sound Constitution, all one word, or email us at asoundconstitution@gmail.com. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Until then,